Hey guys, my name is VaulSC, hope that you're doing well. This is going to be a bat rep of Conquest, the Last Argument of Kings. It's going to be between the 100 Kingdoms, which is me playing 100 Kingdoms, and my opponent playing Wadroon. So I'm going to take you right through the whole game, start to finish, bat rep, photo, style, slideshow type thing that you guys have seen from me plenty before. Just for those of you who are a little bit newer to my channel, bear in mind I've been doing Infinity for the last 8 years, and before that, 5 years of War Machine, and then of course Warhammer back in the day. Again, my name is VaulSC. I've just recently got into Conquest. I'm really enjoying it. I've played half a dozen games in person and a couple of games on Tabletop Simulator. If you guys would like to sort of talk to me about the game and maybe even line up a game against me on Tabletop Simulator, check out the Discord link in the description. That'll take you to my Discord where you can interact with me if you want to, and you're probably already in the main Conquest Discord where everybody is, chatting about the game, but I just thought I'd give you an alternative way to play against me. A little bit about me. Again, I've been a wargamer for about 20 years, and I've just recently started getting into Conquest this year. Before that, it was Infinity. Back in the year 2007, I actually invented the whole slideshow bat rep format and style of basically showing you one picture at a time and talking about the game. Since then, quite a lot of other people on YouTube have gone and started making bat reps like that, which is awesome. The really strong thing about that format is you get to see a bit more insight about the thought process that goes into a really good competitive game. And then, of course, you've still got other people doing the classic sort of footage of play-by-plays like on Tabletop and Cricket Gamers for Conquest, for example, which is also really cool, especially for people who want to just sort of see physically what the game is like to play and get a sense of that. So it's really amazing to see all of that going on. I'm really stoked about Conquest. Hopefully going to be playing tons more games this year, both in person and on Tabletop Simulator. One other thing about me is that I also did a really cool tabletop wargaming comedy show called Table Game Fun Times, which took me about a year and a half. We did the entire season 1 of that show, 8 episodes in total, and just click on up here, the link, which will take you to the start of that series if you want to check it out. Really appreciate if you have a watch of that and let me know what you think of it. Okay, so this battle was from an in-person game I played against my buddy Hayden last Wednesday night. Just letting you know, it does turn out to be a bit of a one-sided game. Homeboy forgot to put some models onto the table that he had in his list, and just a bunch of things sort of went wrong. But I still want to show you the bat rep anyway, just to get into it, more because I want the opportunity to really talk about my local scene and the kind of games I've been having, and just get some photos out to you. So why don't we just dive into it, and we'll take a look at army lists just to kick us off. So let me just get the head out of the way. So here's my 100 Kingdoms army list. This is what I would describe as a starter set intro kind of list that only uses the miniatures that I've purchased. I'm playing what I have, and it's just straight out of the box, and this is helping me get into the game. This is not really a good, optimal 100 Kingdoms list. It's not a meta list. It just uses some of the starter set stuff. The consensus online, from what I've seen in Discord, is that the Noble Lord on foot is actually the weakest 100 Kingdoms character, whereas the Imperial Officer is the strongest. I also believe that, having now studied the game a fair bit. The problem with the Noble Lord is, especially if you make him your Warlord, he's got the 8-inch bubble of rerolls for your infantry, doesn't affect your cavalry, and it's just a bit small. What's happening is you're generally spreading out your army and you're going after different objectives, and he's not able to provide it to them in the long term. And then when he does get into combat, he's not going to be in a lasting combat that, goes over many, many turns. It's usually going to be decided after 1 or 2 turns, and the rerolling 6s isn't super impactful. The other thing about him that I find a little bit limiting is that his particular warband options, if we just jump back here, you can see that when you add regiments, you don't get access to any of the really, really good stuff that 100 Kingdoms has available. So Household Knights can be souped up. You'd normally want to put them in the Mounted Noble Lord warband, which I do have here, but you really need to support them with veterans rather than Relentless Drill and a lot of other items. Noble Lord does get access to Longbowmen. That's something sort of a specialty for him, but even though the Longbowmen got buffed recently, the thing is that they don't really quite do enough damage output for their points. They don't really compare well, I think, to Bow Chosen and to Marksman clones. They're still a bit expensive, and at volley 2, even when using arcing fire, you've just got to get so many shots out of them for them to really make a big impact in the game. So they're not super consistent. You can also put the chapter mage in them and buff them that way, but yeah, I just think at that point you're investing a little bit too much. So the Noble Lord on foot, not the best character. I am looking forward to playing some lists that use the Imperial Officer, which I have painted up. Everything else here is pretty self-explanatory. Prior Commander is, I think, the other character in this faction that is at the top, really, and it's mainly because of Ashen Dawn. They are probably the strongest unit that this faction has at the moment. I think that they could use a little bit of a nerf. Recently, the guy that won Gen Con had like 2 units of 5 of these, so not too surprising that he won. They just do a colossal amount of damage, and they can tank a colossal amount of damage. I feel like they could probably get away with making them attacks 5 instead of 6, and just reducing their points cost slightly, or they could give them defense 3 plus hardened. They used to have defense 3 and a shield. I don't think that they'll go back to doing that, just because the miniatures themselves don't have the shield. The one feature of this list, though, that I do like a lot and would continue to run constantly is this guy, the Fierce Priest. I think that he's actually awesome. He comes in this unit of militia, which are very, very cheap. He's medium, so he counts as scoring when he's in the light unit, because the characters can score. Elysian Fragment, it's a bit slow in terms of tempo, because you've got to draw the Priest, activate the Elysian Fragment, then draw the militia, make sure they're not dead, and then you actually have to be in charge range. But if you can wrangle all of that, they will just delete anything they touch because of the Blessed from the Fierce Priest and the Elysian Shard causing smite, so their attacks just delete, just go straight through defense. So I've got the Servite in there. I think the March and Resolve is important to keep them alive for a little bit, to tank a charge, and then getting into charge range with the March, I think, is a big deal for me. Fierce Priest, I've got Arcane 1 and 2, just because I take a lot of militia, and I don't want the attempt to put Blessed on them to ever fail, so that's why I've just invested a bit more in them. Arcane 1's still handy as well when you use Holy Fire, for example. So Fierce Priest is, I feel like, a staple for my 100 Kingdom style at the moment. I will try out the Mage eventually, but the Priest, I think, is going to be in my list long term. My opponent running Wadroon, of course. Now, he sent me this army list, and sadly, when he actually put them on the table, he forgot to actually put all the stands of his Blooded and Braves on there. He really is just trying out the Thunder Chieftain. This arrived in the mail, and he's painted it up, and he doesn't actually have the Thunder Riders yet. They're being proxied. Everything else just pretty standard. I just don't think that this is a super optimized Wadroon list. I'm playing Wadroon myself on Tabletop Simulator this Sunday, so you'll better see a bat rep for that as well. Sign of Conquest is pretty mean, though. I've faced this guy a couple of times now. The thing about him is that he activates and he casts Crescendo, which means that he's got to put the Conquest chant markers in sequence. Then he automatically activates the Chosen. They have Fanatics, so they're going to go up to, they basically go from 0 to 100. They go immediately to Tier 3 Conquest. It means that they march with additional speed, they charge, and then they clash, and they are really quite beefy, because then they're going to have shock from the Thunder Chieftain. The Scion himself is in there with Cleave too, and they just delete stuff. They're quite expensive, but they are very strong, and they just have a massive threat range, so I've been really wrecked by them in the past. So this is the list, but we're going to get on to the game. It's not so much about the army lists. This is not really like a high-level army list kind of bat rep. We are now going to go to the objectives here. So this is going to be Forlorn Hope, Scenario 5 from the pack. This is one I've been playing a lot lately because it's nice and simple. You've got one big zone to your left, and your opponent does as well, and there are 2 objectives to the middle. You want to kill the one on your opponent's side of the field, but you also get a lot of points for killing warlords and characters and regiments. So if you have a massive, goblin-style horde of like 14 or 15 regiments, so that's going to be quite painful with all of the points scooped up if your opponent wipes you out. But generally, I find that it's about just sort of equally dividing your army and holding both sides. As soon as one player punches through and also holds one of their flanks at the same time, they really pull ahead. Okay, let's move now to some pictures. So this is This is before the game starts. You can see my wonderful opponent up here. But as mentioned, the scenario, you've got a big zone on your left and a smaller zone on your right. So my opponent's bigger zones here and his smaller zones around here. And we're trying to take out these objectives through the middle. Just in terms of the terrain, we're playing these as just your forests. So basically that cuts down the amount of barrage you can put through them with shooting. And they turn off things like impact hits and inspire if you charge through them, especially with medium and heavy, if I recall correctly. We're playing these bits here as impassable, just these sort of stone ruins, but these other areas are hills, so they just basically block line of sight. You can't charge something that's on the other side if you can't kill it. These small bits of rubble, I basically said that they're not impossible. You can move through them. You just can't end with any stands on them, so you can sort of cross over them. I don't like battlefields that are too restrictive on movement. I'm more of a fan of stuff like hills and forests, mainly in a rank and file war game like this. Otherwise, you just get bottlenecked too much, and there's less maneuvering, if you guys know what I mean. So my opponent starts off here with a hunting pack unit, and they just scream right on the middle of the table. I'm going to take a lot of close-ups here because my opponent's painting is really, really good. Like he's an excellent painter. And what I'm doing is my typical moving in with the cabbage farmers, as I like to call them. And the great thing about this is that there is the short bubble around this, and the priest is in the front rank. So they are going to be able to just start scoring +2 at the end of every round for a while. And the other cool thing is that they sort of just zone off an area next to this ruin. So as my opponent comes past, he just has to be really respectful of the fact that these guys will charge 6 plus d6 thanks to the Servite, and the priest may well have Blessed and Elysian Shard on them, so you've got to be really careful about that. And you can sort of see the general positioning. This is the right-hand flank, so not really too worried about these guys, because if they just come into the front, they won't really beat the militia. The militia will typically have Blessed on them, and they have decent resolve due to the unit size and the Servite. These guys do probably the most damage if you eventually get into the side. I feel like a good strategy with a unit like this is just to keep it back for a while and just try to look for an opening in the late game, and then come and just sort of hit the side of a unit, or as a screen really, because they're very cheap, so you can actually move them right in front of the Thunder Riders, for example. So that's one way to play them. My opponent coming up the right flank with his Raptor Riders, and again, God, they're just so gorgeous. These are some of my favorite miniatures in Conquest, and of course, we're talking about a very competent painter painting them up, so that's just really looking cool. Me on the other side here with my beautiful squires. Love these little guys. These guys are really, really cool. I love the fact they have Opportunist. My play with them is really just to be patient and just to wait and wait and wait on the flanks. And then when my opponent is sort of forced to move his troops towards the center or deal with some sort of threat that are brought on, these guys will try and sneak past. I will then either use them as expendable bait that just charges right in front of an enemy unit to screen, or I will actually get into the flank and benefit from Opportunists. Opponent bringing in his hunters right through the middle here, and what he's going to be doing with these guys during this game is he's going to be going for this objective here. So this is his one, and with my one, he's just going to shoot into it. The thing about these objectives is that they can only be damaged with 1 point of damage per round. I think you need to be heavy to do 2. I'll have to double check the rules on that, but the main thing is that these guys here won't be able to automatically just rip it down. They're going to have to spend quite a few turns doing it, so hopefully I should be able to answer them before that happens. So basically what we've got here at the end, and starting turn 2 effectively, is that I've got points on the board already because this little zone here includes the Theist Priest, and he's medium. My opponent's brought all of his lights on. I haven't got anything on this side, but again, the Hunters are light, so they can't actually capture this little thing, and he's got no scoring units on that, so I'm already pulling ahead by a couple of points. With these Raptor Riders, they're sort of threatening to come in this way or even around this side, so they're nicely flanking here. And I'm not too worried about these guys because really, what are they going to do? They're going to go straight into the front of that or straight into the front of that, and I'm going to have an additional unit here to block them. And this bit of terrain here is really helping to stop these guys from being flanked, so just generally looking good. So starting turn two, my opponent just running through here with the Raptor Riders. I guess one way for me to answer them is just to bring a unit right in front of them there. Not really worth it because I need to be scoring. You can see this little stack of green cards, which is my command deck. That's effectively where the zone is for me to score. So all I've really got to do is just put something here to sort of prevent them from flanking. If I can have a unit that sort of just sits around there, then they're not really going to bother me very much. Now over here, he does have these little dinos, so I've brought in my 5 stands of longbowmen, a bit excessive, but hey, what's going to be happening with these longbowmen in the long run is that I am going to run them as, what do you call those dudes? I kind of want to remember what they're called. So add warband. It's the Imperial Officer. I'm going to run them as Imperial Ranger Corps. So 3 of them will be that, and the other 3 will be painted up as Hunter Cadre. And then eventually I'll buy the legit units for that. But you've got them moving on, and they can move and volley, and then shooting against these little dinos here. But one thing I didn't realize about them is that they have loose formation, which means that I'm half barrage. But still managed to pick off a couple of wounds onto them, which was nice. Or 1 wound, I should say. You can see the little black dice there. So that's that. And really this flank is just held down very, very well because anything that comes into short range here of the objective gets hit by the militia with Elysian Shard. Anything that tries to flank around here, I can just put these guys in the way. The idea is that this unit can just sort of block movement along there, and then I can just charge into the flank of anything that sits around there, and there's an opening for the longbowmen to shoot through. So this is a really strong position for the 100 Kingdoms, but my opponent can sort of take advantage of this by putting 1 scoring unit up here. So if he just puts like a small unit of blooded there and then sends all of his other units like the Thunder Riders and the Apex on the other side of the table, he may be able to break through on the other side because I've already committed 3 units there, so that could be an option for him. Hunter's moving up and just planting a wound on this objective on my side. Again, only 1 wound per turn. That's when the Household Guard show up, and you can see that I've got 6 stands of them, plus the Noble Lord, and they have Relentless Drill, which makes them support 3, which is amazing. But again, this unit, I mean, they're not the best unit in Conquest. They are merely average. The Noble Lord makes them a lot better, but they're not the best thing that 100 Kingdoms have to offer. They're still cool, though, and I just love the sculpts. I just love the poses and the massive spiky halberds that they've got in their capes. They're freaking cool. Also, one thing I painted up recently is the retinue. So these guys aren't quite finished, but you can see that I've filled out the Noble Lord sort of stand with the retinue. It makes the empty character stand look so much better. And I'm also looking forward to doing another round of painting on the Household Guard here. I've really just blocked in the colors, as you can see. But that command stand in the middle that you can see here, I'm going to be painting that very soon. I'm really looking forward to it. Okay, my opponent bringing on a small unit of blooded next to his objective so he can start scoring. I believe he forgot to bring in the full-sized one. What has he got here? So his list that he sent me on Facebook says 4 blooded, and that's his only blooded unit. So he's forgotten to put a stand there. Look, we can fix that next game, just for fun. This is just a bit more of a, intro bat rep, me getting back into the whole bat reps thing. It's not too big a deal. All right, so over here we've got the Fierce Priest moving in with his militia just a bit further forward. The reason why this stand at the back is displaced is because there's an objective underneath them. But I'm just getting him in range to use Holy Fire, which should be useful against the little dinos because Hunting Pack, if we look at loose formation, halves barrage, but it doesn't say anything about magic spells, so that should be a brutal way of just dishing some pain into them. Also, these guys creeping a little bit further forward. Again, they just want to make sure that if the Wadroon bringing any troops on the other side of the forest, I'll pull back. But if he just does nothing for the entire game here on this side, the squires can just sort of creep along the flank and eventually get into the side of those blooded and just cause them some problems. So they're really useful there. I think that if you have a unit that's very fast, you shouldn't just be automatically moving it as fast as you can every single turn. You want to wait for the opportunity to use their speed later on the game when the opportunity presents itself. And in the early to mid game, you may not have that opportunity, so you don't necessarily want to squander your unit. Okay, looking at the beginning of turn 3 here, or thereabouts, let's just go over what's going on. So I now have the Household Guard within the large bubble for scoring there, can pick up 2 points. The Theist Priest himself is still just in that small bubble, he'll get a couple of points as well. My opponent has the Blooded over here for a couple of points, so he's able to get onto the board, but I'm leading. The Hunters are just putting everything into this little objective, hoping to kill it, and he's sort of moved back with his little dinos here. He realizes he can't get any more damage done, but that's going to allow me to push forward with these guys, and it just put a lot of pressure on this unit here and this unit here, but as you can see, he's got quite a lot of dudes left to come on, so we'll see which side he commits them to going into this third turn. Alright, the Theist Priest is coming up into range of those little hunting pack dinosaurs. As you can see, he's lifting his gauntleted fist to cast a fiery blast. So that's going to kill the little dinos hunting pack. My opponent then does bring on the Thunder Chieftain, and that unit of Raptor Riders is proxying as some Thunder Riders, because, you know, they're still in the mail. He hasn't had a chance to get them yet, but again, great painting already on this Thunder Chief. Obviously, he hasn't finished the miniature, but what an amazing little resin miniature. It is looking incredibly cool. Over here on his right flank, he's bringing on the other unit of Braves. Again, you see 3 stands of Braves there. He was supposed to bring in 5 stands. And it's just like, it's a bit of a miss game, guys, but that's okay. We can still really enjoy his fantastic paint job. I mean, look at that. So they're coming in right behind the unit of Hunters, and this little marker shows the center of the zone, so they'll start scoring. Here's Blooded over here, just repositioning a little bit. I love his Aberration model. You see that red guy there? Looks just so killer. And the Aberration is very popular upgrade choice for Blooded because it gives them lethal demise and just makes them great for camping and holding objectives and punishing opponents that come after them later. So over here, my Longbowen move up. I get a couple of stands in range of those Blooded, just peppering away at them. And you can see that the Thunder Chieftain are come down the side, maybe through those forests. Probably not the best place for them, to be honest, because they will lose impact hits, which is quite an important thing for Thunder Riders. But my opponent still wants to have a crack at it. So over here, the Hunters moving further into the middle, taking another wound off this objective. They're just continuing to throw their sharp spears into it. So I've decided to answer that by bringing in the Household Knights, along with the Mounted Noble Lord, who I just recently painted. You can see him in the middle here. And the idea here is that if my opponent shoots a third time and picks up 3 objective points from this, I can just move through and just crush him. But if he attacks the Knights, then I'm not going to lose points from the objective, and I can still charge him anyway. So just really happy with these blue guys. I was saying to Blind Crow on Discord just last night that my army color scheme is almost like, you know, Pan-Oceania and Ultramarines had a baby. Look at them, they're just so blue. And of course, I'm using all sorts of Lightroom tricks to up the saturation and vibrance on the colors. They don't look that bright in real life. I've just edited the photos, of course. Okay, over here, the Raptor Riders are moving through, and they're just really threatening the flank of my Household Guard. And again, lovely pictures of them, but it's just they're not a very good counter for the Household Guard. The Household Guard have got the Standard of Steel to switch off Inspired. They've got Indomitable. They are Defense 3. We're not talking about a lot of cleave here from the Raptor Riders, and the Noble Lord's going to give them rerolls on 6s, so I'm not too worried about this unit. So then we have the Priory Commander with his brutal unit of Crimson Tower Knights. I've decided to bring them in behind the Longwomen because this is the side of the table where my opponent has deployed his Thunder Chieftain, and bringing them here means that the Longwomen are just going to be able to shoot and shoot and shoot all game, and if the Thunder Riders come in close and attack the Longwomen, then I'm just going to be able to countercharge with, you know, Wedge and all the impact hits and my feet turn from War Machines, the Supremacy ability being popped. So this just means that I should be able to answer the Thunder Riders very, very comfortably. Over here, we have the Chosen showing up with the Scion of Conquest. He's opted to bring them into the same flank, so seeing that the Crimson Tower Knights are there, he's just going to start moving them up and eventually start bullying things with their massive threat range. But again, I'm starting to layer my troops in a way that I should be able to countercharge them, and that's what's making me feel pretty confident. Over here, the Noble Lord gives the command, and you can see the drummer guy. I expect it's the drummer guy who's like changing the beat of his drums to make them reform, but they've changed from a 3 wide by 2 deep unit into a 2 wide 4 deep unit, and then they've simply charged the dinos, the Raptor Riders, and it means that I don't get any attacks this turn because I've reformed then charged. But next turn, I mean, he can attack me and just clash into combat, but he's not going to do very much. We've got Standard of Steel, Indomitable, Defense 3, plenty of stands, and then the counterattack is going to wipe out the Raptor Riders. And because the bubble of the objective is actually, you know, got a 6-inch diameter, and it's such a massive unit, I'm still going to be able to score from this position and then turn right back around. So, yeah, I feel like his Raptor Riders probably should have just waited a bit and just sort of camped around somewhere else. Another photo here you can have a look at. All right, so you can see another picture I've taken of this Scion of Conquest. I'm just trying to take as many close-up photos as I can because the painting is just golden. It's really, really cool. I can't wait to see him paint as Thunder Riders as well once they show up in the mail. So these guys are scoring. They're in the little zone at the moment. Over here, the Priest is just shifting his position a little bit more, using Blessed just in case, and the what do you call them? The Longwomen are trying to get a few shots in. Just repositioning the squires a bit more as well, pulling back a little bit. The idea, as you can see here, is that the Thunder Riders can't really attack very effectively. Like, if they come in here and wipe out my squires, that's brilliant, because they're going to be facing like this. And then what's going to happen is that the Crimson Tower Knights are going to charge them in the flank, which is going to be freaking devastating. You really don't want to be the Thunder Riders in that sort of case, because if I look at their stats defensively, Resolve 3 on the Chief, Resolve 3 on the Thunder Riders, they do have hardened thanks to their ability there. But the problem is that, you know, we're talking about terrifying from the impact hits. So they're going to go away pretty quickly. So I'm pretty happy with this. I feel like my opponent's best play here would be to try and go for the long game. Like, he's starting to score on both sides. He can move his Thunder Riders back through the other side of the battlefield and come somewhere else. So I believe this is the beginning of turn 4, I think we're up to now. Let's just talk about the positioning. Again, it is looking pretty one-sided for 100 Kingdoms, but that's okay. So this big objective here is capturing the edge of this Household Guard unit. They will be deleting these guys very quickly. The Hunters are trying to shoot this objective, but now the Knights are showing up to attack there. His Braves will be able to countercharge, but I'm hoping the high defense and armor here will hold on to that. He does still have this Dino here, which I'm quite worried about. And on this side, the problem is, again, his Thunder Riders don't really want to come through this forest. I do have the counter charge through there, but the Chosen, if they come through here, they will be able to delete any of these units. But once again, with the Knights at the back, I should have a response, and I still, of course, have my Ashen Dawn unit waiting in the wings. All right. So my opponent makes the decision to kill the objective. He's only got one more wound to do it, so the Hunters easily do that. I do feel like that was a little bit of a mistake. The better thing to do, I think, would have been to pull them back out of like charge and clash range, and have the Apex Predator ready to rip up the Knights once they go too far outfield, and then you can kill this objective off in the late game, I think would have been the play. But he decides to go for it early, kills that objective. So the Knights blow the horn and they start charging in, and of course they are in range to really slay these guys. They've got the impact hits, they've got the Noble Lord, they've got I believe I upgraded my Knights to have the Oliphant's Roar, and let's get rid of this guy here. So what did I give them? I did give them Oliphant's Roar and Tip of the Lance, so they do get Wedge, which is Cleave on the charge, and Oliphant's Roar does give them the Glorious Charge, so +1 Clash Terrifying. They are not veteran Knights, but this helps to make up for it, and they do very well against the Hunters. So another picture here, you can see that they are very blue, and they're very regal. Over here, the Raptor Riders are ripping into the Household Guard. As predicted, they don't do a lot of damage. I think I took 3 wounds altogether, and then, of course, the Household Guard wiped them out. Over here, the Blooded move through, and he's wanted to use them as a bit of a screen against the Militia. The only problem, of course, is that the Militia do have the Fierce Priest with the Holy Fire ability, and they are pretty tanky. Over here, the Braves now move through, and again, this is a miss game. There should be 5 stands of Braves, but the Braves don't have a lot of armor piercing, and to get through the Household Knights, it might take them a little while, but they do have access to the Cult of Death. So Death can be quite useful. I believe you get some upgrades which helps you with armor a little bit, and my opponent was making some use of that. Also, Bloodlust can mean that you charge prematurely, which can be less than ideal. I don't think my opponent took the Officer for the Champion +1 attack. They do have support too, which is why you want to take a bigger unit of them. So Clash 2 with Inspired and Shock, does pump out a fair few hits, but no cleave in there, and the Knights, of course, are defense 3+ shield. So in they come, they are charging through and not doing a lot of damage. Over here, the Thunder Chief just moving through and just trying to figure out where he needs to be on the battlefield. Over here, the Longbowmen, they don't have to use Arcing Fire. They have a clean line of fire through to the Blooded, so they can aim and shoot, and there's a lot of them there, so they are really wrecking the Blooded. And what happens too is that you can actually see, if we show here, there's the 4 means that these guys have taken 4 wounds, which is kind of painful. And they don't really want to take a lot of damage against shooting and spells because they have the Aberration for the lethal demise, so they blow up, but that doesn't really work if they're being shot at. It's only in combat. So yeah, they're in a world of trouble, especially with Holy Fire about to erupt onto them. Now the Braves, they're fighting here, and they're just going to give this guy an opportunity. This is the Apex Predator. So the Apex Predator can walk his way around and just try and get into the side there, and he should be able to munch on the Knights fairly effectively later on in the game. Only problem for him is I feel like with this objective here being scored by the Apex Predator for now, if he moves off it, he's just going to give up the points from the long run. You've got the Chosen capturing over here and the Apex capturing over here, but he doesn't have like an additional light unit to hang back and keep the scoreboard ticking. And this kind of scenario does sort of benefit lists that have a couple of really cheap medium units to hold your local objectives back at home while you make the push to your opponent's side of the table. So a beautiful photo here of my opponent's Apex Predator with Predator riding it. Really cool colors. And another photo just because we want to see what he looks like from behind. And the high airborne view of the battlefield showing you, of course, the Knights embroiled in combat with the Braves. Another one, just, for good measure. All right, so the Priest activates, and he fires at the Blooded with Holy Fire. This is a bit of a swingy ability because it does 2 hits per success. So if you really flub it and you get like 1 hit, that's 2 hits effectively. But if you get 4, that becomes 8. And in this case, I spiked it a little bit and just did a world of damage to the Blooded because it causes resolve checks as well, and they just got horrifically burned. As you can see from this photo, there was previously a unit of Blooded here, and they have been evaporated by Holy Fire, as they deserved. Okay, but the Chosen are on their way. Now, the thing about the Chosen is that they can easily get up to tier 3 of Conquest, meaning that they can march with +3 march or 2. But it's a long way, and then they can charge it, and then they can clash, which is just stupid. We've got the Squires just pulling back very casually. Again, it's about the positioning. When they are facing this way, the Thunder Chief, even if he does come through the forest, he's going to be on this kind of angle, which means that this part of the stand is going to be exposed to the Crimson Tower Knights, and that is going to be the nail in the coffin. All right. The heavenly music plays and the trumpet fanfare can be heard across the land, and the ground shakes as the Knights of the Ashen Dawn appear, and they decide to grace the middle of the battlefield with their presence, moving through behind the militia. And the thinking here, with the strong endgame unit, is that they can wheel around and just move through this if they really need to deal with that apex predator and crush that side of the table and go and score on the opponent's objective on my left. So they have that option if this side of the battlefield somehow checks out. If the Chosen commit to the militia, the Chosen will beat the militia, but then I can countercharge with the Ashen Dawn if they're here. So I am confident that this is a solid positioning for them. And as we move into turn 5, here's the sort of position. And you can see it's very one-sided for 100 Kingdoms in this particular game. Again, my opponent forgot to bring some stands on. He's trying out the Thunder Riders for the first time. The other games I've had against him have been quite close. So this objective here is being held by the lovely Household Guard. They're very red and blue, aren't they? The battle is raging between the Household Knights and the Braves. The Apex Predator is going to be able to come into this point here and beat them up. We have the Chosen holding this objective and scoring, but as soon as they leave it, they're going to stop scoring, which is bad. They may be able to delete the militia, but if they don't, for some reason, the militia, if they get the charge, the militia will beat them because of the Servite, sorry, not the Servite, the Fierce Priest with Elysian Shard giving them Smite, and the Relentless Drill from the supporting ranks and Blessed will just really delete a unit of Chosen. If they come in and wipe out the militia, the Ashen Dawn will charge them, which will also do the job. If they do nothing, the longbowmen will shoot long range and eventually do enough damage to them to kill them in the very, very long run. And if he brings the Thunder Riders through, well, I've got this unit here and this unit here to outmaneuver them, basically. So feeling very, very confident that this is going my way. Just a quick snapshot of my notepad. Really like this notepad. If you guys aren't already sort of keeping track of your points using your phone or some sort of system that you have, you really should be doing this. This is not just good for fair play, but it's also important for just making sure you're not missing anything. So what I do is I have, 100 Kingdoms versus Wardrune at the top, the turn numbers listed down here, and every turn I just sort of keep track of the points as they are scored. So as soon as you kill a regiment or you grab an objective, I'm just putting the points that were scored there, and this is the running total down this side and down this side. So after turn 4, I'm 22 points, he's got 15. This particular turn, I did score a lot because the 4 comes from the objectives, and this is from killing like a unit of Blooded and a unit of Raptor Riders and, something else like a unit of Hunters or something like that. So they're really racking up the points, but this is a good way to sort of keep track of the game, and I thoroughly recommend you guys do something like this. Okay, so the Braves almost done with the Knights here, or should I say the Knights almost done with the Braves, just ripping them down to a couple of stands left. But that means that the Apex Predator charges in and he starts using all of his brutal abilities like Impact and Cleave and all of that. I think that this particular turn he marched and then charged, so he doesn't really get the opportunity to do his Cleave, his Clash action, but the Knights, once they are already in combat, they lose their impact hits, they don't have Wedge anymore, and they don't have any other supporting abilities, so it's going to be a bit of a rough ride here for these Knights. Taking as many photos as I can, of course, of the lovely close-up action, the Predator looking really, really cool up atop there. So, my opponent deciding that he needs to pull the trigger, the Chosen are activated. What really happens here in the sequence is that he draws the card for the Scion. The Scion chants and then casts Crescendo, and that adds another thing, and then it activates the Chosen and the Fanatic, so they move really far, and then they charge, they make it in, and then they clash, and they have heaps of attacks, and they're very accurate because they have Shock from the Chieftain and Inspired, and then of course the Scion attacks with Cleave too. And my little cabbage farmers just didn't stand a chance, they just got wrecked. Blood is everywhere. Another close-up of the Chosen just hammering me, and we are left with the situation where the way is clear. So you've got the little scoring bubble there, so my opponent's actually going to be able to contest this or even score it on my side of the table. But the Ashen Dawn haven't activated yet, so they are going to be able to charge. Note that I haven't actually given them a standard. So this is very risky. It actually cost me a game recently where I had to roll without the reroll on a 3+, and I rolled a 2, and that was the difference between winning and losing. It's just so expensive, 15 points for a standard. When I play a more serious list, I'm going to run them in a group of 4, and I will take the standard. But the way I want to play them is just to always make sure that they're going to either just march and charge or just get the charge without having to roll for it and not take too many risks. But yeah, taking a unit without the standard is a little bit risky. But you can sort of see what the problem here is, right? The Ashen Dawn can charge through. The Chosen have already used their clash for this turn, and the Chosen are going to be up against the impact hits first, and then, of course, the attacks, which I can use rerolls on because I don't need to use the Blessed for armor this particular turn. All right, so the Household Guard are reforming again and turning around, and they're still scoring, but they're getting to a position where they can bail out the Knights later on by charging through and dealing with the Apex Predator and moving on to his side of the table to score on his side, which is going to be dangerous. Over here, the Thunder Riders, now that the Chosen have pulled the trigger, this is really the only chance to move through and use the Chosen as sort of a distraction, really, to buy you some time. So he's trying to wheel his way past the forest and setting up a position where he can move through and charge clash. One problem with this is that I've got more cards than him, so if his plan is to activate the Thunder Riders last and then move in and impact hits and blast something, and then on the next turn activate them immediately, it's just going to be hard because if he moves in this turn or next turn, I can always just save the Crimson Tower Knights to the last activation, and that will sort of prevent that kind of play. Over here, we have the Predator just finally clashing and bashing away at the Knights, and that is doing a ton of damage to them. They do have Cleave 2 here on the Apex Predator, unfortunately. Over here, we also have, this is just brutal, the Longbowmen are activating and shooting the Chosen before the Ashen Dawn even charge, and this is point blank rage. I'm sort of feeling bad for my opponent here because, they're +1 barrage, and they're aiming and shooting and just ripping into these Chosen. It's just not very nice. So Chosen taking a bunch of damage. I've also got the Squires moving in and just making sure there's no way that he can get past. If we look at this again, I mean, they're set up in such a way that the Thunder Riders are going to come in a block right in front here. The Longbowmen can shoot at them if they want, and then the Crimson Tower Knights are going to be able to charge them in the flank, and there's going to be enough space for them to do that, or even in the back. Not really sure how that's going to roll out. Once again, the light shines down from heaven, and the Ashen Dawn decide that they've had enough of these Chosen in their lands. They are blasphemous, and move in with, of course, charging, inspiring, clashing. They have Blessed, which they don't need to use on their armor, so they decide to reroll, even though it's like 19 attacks on Clash 5 with rerolling the 6s, so it's just brutal. For some reason, they got buffed to have Wedge as well as Cleave 1, so they effectively Cleave 2, and the Chosen unit that's already kind of softened up by the Longbowmen is now deleted, and the Scion attempts to attack back, does a little bit of damage actually with this sort of last gasp hit, but they are they're slaughtered. Alright, there he is there, just with his final hurrah before he gets basically ridden down. He's just ridden over. He's trampled on. Over here, the Knights just shuffle to the side a little bit, just making absolutely sure that once the Thunder Riders do move in, that I'll be able to just attack them without having to really roll for it. That's something I just want to ensure. So beginning of turn 6, I think it is, we still have the Household Guard scoring on this side. The Ashen Dawn are actually scoring on my side over here. He's not scoring on this objective or this objective, so the points, as you can imagine, are just pulling away for 100 Kingdoms greatly. The Predator have just severely damaged this unit. There has been a challenge between the Predator and the Noble Lord, inflicting more damage on the Predator, I might add. The Noble Lord sort of got a flight, partly because he's got a lot of armor, and the Braves are still sort of just bashing away, but unfortunately what's going to happen here is that the Household Guard are going to be able to move in, charge, and delete the Braves quite handily. And as you can see, this one unit against these 4 units, not looking too pretty. Okay, so my Squires, and this is a mistake from me, I need to not do this. I've decided just to move into the front to pin him there and use him, make sure he uses up his activation. And that's going to allow me to move in with my Ashen Dawn into the flank and just sort of set that up. But really, I just didn't need to do that. There's no need to do that. It just gives them a chance to sort of delete the Squires and then fight off the Ashen Dawn later. Whereas I could have just won a lot more cleanly by just staying disciplined and determined and patient. Over here, my favorite photo of the collection here, the Apex Predator munching on some Knights, and they've got a lot of armor, but he has a lot of sharp teeth, so there's that. my Ashen Dawn march and then charge to do impact hits. And look, it's just a mistake here. There's no need for me to be doing this because it gives my opponent the ability to effectively activate the Thunder Riders next turn and just clash before I have the chance to do that. I've got one stand already very wounded, as you can see on the right-hand side. So again, just not necessary for me to make this play. It's sort of like, it is kind of gaming ending, but if there were any other stands on the table for him, regiments available, this is a bad play. And I also procced my supremacy ability for the Priority Commander way too early, and that's another mistake I'm making a lot in Conquest that I need to fix, really. Okay, the Thunder Rider himself, the chief, he's got his Triceratops there, and he's just beating up the mounted squires very badly. So they get hosed as we'd expect. On my side, the Crimson Tower Knights moving over top of the Longbowmen and just setting up a position where no matter what happens next turn, I'll be able to charge the Thunder Riders and wipe them out, because you can see that the squires are in front there, but I will lose them, and then the knights just charge through into that side, while the Ashen Dawn are sort of just delaying the Thunder Riders for a while. It's all unnecessary, really, but it's happening. So this is the last stand of the squire, the Triceratops, a lot more powerful than the horse, as it were, and I lose the squires, predictably. Over here, we have some Braves. Now that the Knights have been completely munched on by the Apex Predator, the Braves are there to sort of reform and move around, but they are in a world of trouble, because in come the Household Guard with their little retinue here, and that's a charge, and the Braves are going to be chopped up a lot by Halberds. And that does give you this last sort of turn 7 kind of photo here, where he's lost his Predator because a duel with the Household Noble Lord actually finished him off. And with the Household Guard going into the Apex Predator, they will be able to deal with them. And my opponent on the other side, you can see that he's in a pretty bad way there, losing against the Ashen Dawn and the Crimson Tower about to show up. So Household Guard charging into the Apex Predator and killing it. And then over here, the embroiled combat between the Thunder Riders and the Ashen Dawn. As I've mentioned earlier, these guys are proxies, of course. So Ashen Dawn's still slugging away, but really, once the Crimson Tower Knights charge in here and use impact hits, then that's my opponent's army completely deleted. So a couple more photos before we finish the game. There's the Thunder Chieftain, and that was pretty much it. So we basically called it. My opponent just didn't have any troops left after that. So kind of a fun game. Again, I'm sorry it was a bit one-sided, but again, just a casual Wednesday night where we're trying out a few new things. I'm looking forward to showing you some really close games between me and Homeboy here, as well as against our local Spies player, who I've had some tough games against recently, and the Old Dominion, which are there. And we also have a really good scene up and coming at the moment with people playing, people collecting Nords, and we've got another Spies player, and somebody just started Dwegom, and a couple of my Infinity friends sort of looking at the game with a little bit of interest. So scene's going really, really well, enjoying the game, and I'm also going to be painting up the Founders exclusive St. George, looking forward to that. I do have some proxies I'm going to use for Order of the Sword, for the Priority Commander in the Order of Sword unit, until the new models are released for that down the line. But for now, thanks for watching this bat rep. I'm going to be showing you guys a tutorial for Tabletop Simulator very soon. Join my Discord, the link's in below if you want to play against me on Tabletop Simulator. And for now, video up here for you to check out if you want to see some more of my stuff. So I hope you have a good day, evening, morning, wherever you are.